Hello everyone. In today's video, I bring you a story that will deeply shake your perception of life and death. Meet Jonah Whitlock, a software engineer who, after facing a near-death experience, returned with a shocking revelation about the future of humanity. He saw 9/11 before it even happened, and what he discovered about the fate of our civilization is simply terrifying. What the angel showed him about the destroyed cities will leave you speechless. So before we get started, go ahead and give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any amazing content like this, and hit the bell to receive all notifications. Get ready for this surprising and revealing journey. My name is Jonah Whitlock, and what I'm about to share with you is something that completely changed my perception of life, death, and everything that exists between these two states. I'm a software engineer, an ordinary man who always had his feet firmly planted in the ground of logic and reason. Or at least, that was the case until the fall of 1994, when I had an experience that challenged everything I believed I knew about reality. I was born and raised in a small town in the American Midwest, the son of hardworking parents who taught me the value of effort and perseverance. From an early age on, I showed aptitude for math and sciences, which naturally led me to the field of engineering. I graduated with honors and soon found myself working on cutting-edge projects in the tech industry. My life followed a predictable and comfortable course. I married young, divorced a few years later, a painful chapter in my life that I'd rather forget, and threw myself into work. Constant travel, conferences, tight deadlines. That was the rhythm of my existence. I considered myself a rational man, skeptical of anything that couldn't be scientifically proven. Then, in October of 1994, I went to Seattle for a technology conference. It was just another business trip, or so I thought. I had no idea that I was about to embark on the most extraordinary journey of my life, a journey that would take me beyond the limits of existence itself. What happened on that trip challenged everything I believed was possible. It was an experience that made me question the nature of reality, consciousness, and the universe itself. And it's this story that I want to share with you today. I know that what I'm going to tell you may seem unbelievable. Even I would have trouble believing it if I hadn't lived every moment of it. But I ask that you listen with an open mind. I'm not here to convince anyone or to preach any sort of doctrine. I'm simply here to report what I saw, felt, and learned during my brief journey beyond life. This experience profoundly transformed me. It changed my view of the world, my values, and how I live my life. And while I can't scientifically prove what happened, I can assure you that every word I'm going to share is true, at least as I experienced and remember it. So, if you're ready, I invite you to join me on this extraordinary journey. A journey that began in a hotel room in Seattle and took me to the far reaches of the universe and back. A journey beyond life, beyond death, and beyond everything I believed was possible. It all started in a fairly ordinary way. It was the fourth day of the conference in Seattle, and I felt tired but satisfied with the contacts I had made and the new technologies I had discovered. I remember going to sleep that night with plans for the next day running through my head. Little did I know that fate had other plans for me. I woke up in the middle of the night with a strange sensation. My entire body ached, and I felt feverish. At first, I attributed it to the exhaustion of the trip and the long hours of the conference. But as the hours passed, my condition quickly worsened. The fever spiked alarmingly, and every muscle in my body seemed to scream in pain at the slightest movement. What scared me the most was the increasing difficulty in breathing. It was as if my lungs were slowly closing, refusing to accept the air I desperately tried to inhale. Each breath was a struggle, and panic began to set in. With great effort, I managed to call the hotel reception. My voice was weak and hoarse, but somehow I communicated the severity of my situation. The minutes that followed were a blur of activity, paramedics arriving, being placed on a stretcher, flashing lights as I was taken to the ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor seemed concerned. I heard words like virus, pneumonia, sepsis, but everything seemed distant, as if I was listening through a thick wall. I underwent a series of tests and was soon connected to machines, with tubes and wires everywhere. The hours dragged on, and I fluctuated between moments of lucidity and periods of feverish delirium. The pain was constant, an oppressive presence that seemed to consume my entire being. I remember having disjointed thoughts about work, about my family, about things I had left unfinished. It was as if my brain was desperately trying to hold on to life, reviewing everything that was important to me. The doctors did their best. I was given strong antibiotics and placed on supplemental oxygen, but nothing seemed to work. My body was waging a fierce battle against an invisible enemy, and I was losing. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of suffering, the doctors decided I was stable enough to return to the hotel. I was advised to rest and to seek medical attention immediately if my condition worsened. I returned to the hotel room, exhausted and still very ill. Lying in bed, drenched in sweat, I floated in a state of semi-consciousness. The fever remained high, and each breath was a struggle. It was at this moment, when I was on the brink between life and death, that something extraordinary happened. Suddenly, I felt a change. It wasn't gradual. It was instant. One moment I was struggling to breathe, feeling every fiber of my body scream in pain. And the next, peace. A peace so deep and complete that it's hard to describe in words. It was in that instant that my journey beyond life began. A journey that would take me to places I never imagined existed, that would challenge everything I believed I knew about reality, and that would forever change the way I see the world and my place in it. The moment I separated from my physical body is something I will never forget. It was such a smooth and natural transition that, at first, I didn't even realize what was happening. One moment, I was lying in the hotel bed, struggling to breathe, my body burning with fever. The next moment, all the pain and discomfort were gone. I opened my eyes, or at least, that's what it felt like, and saw myself floating above my own body. There was no fear, no panic, just a feeling of lightness and freedom that I had never experienced before. I looked down and saw my physical body lying in the bed, pale and still. It was a surreal sight, like watching a stranger sleep. What was most fascinating was that I still felt completely like myself. All my thoughts, memories, and sensations were intact. The only difference was that now I existed outside the limits of my physical body. It was as if my consciousness had expanded, freed from the limitations of flesh and bone. I tried to touch my body, but my hands, or what I perceived as my hands, passed right through it. It was at that moment that the reality of the situation began to sink in. I had left my physical body. I was experiencing what many call an out-of-body experience. The hotel room around me looked different. The colors were more vibrant, the outlines of objects sharper. It was as if I was seeing everything with a new pair of eyes, able to perceive details that my physical eyes had never noticed. I felt a gentle pull, as if something was softly drawing me upward. Effortlessly, I floated through the ceiling of the room and found myself outside the hotel. The city of Seattle stretched out below me, a tapestry of lights and shadows in the night. It was a breathtaking sight, if I even needed to breathe anymore. At that moment, I realized I was no longer bound by the physical laws that govern our material world. I could move just by thinking, pass through solid objects as if they were air. It was an exhilarating freedom, almost terrifying in its vastness. As I floated over the city, I began to notice something strange. Small points of light, like fireflies, seemed to be floating around me. As I focused on them, I realized they were other consciousnesses, other souls, perhaps. Some seemed confused, lost, while others moved with purpose, as if they knew exactly where they were going. That's when I noticed a brighter light on the horizon. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. Not the sun, nor the moon, nor any earthly source of light. It was something more, something beyond, and it was calling to me. Without hesitation, I began to move toward that light. It was as if every part of me knew that was where I was supposed to go. As I got closer, the light became more intense, more welcoming. It was like coming home after a long journey. And that's how I took the next step in my journey beyond life. I left behind the physical world I knew, my body, the city of Seattle, everything familiar. I was about to enter a realm that defied all the logic and reason I once knew. A realm of light, love, and universal truths that would forever change my understanding of existence. As I approached the light, it began to take shape. It was no longer just a bright point on the horizon, but expanded into something I can only describe as a tunnel of pure, vibrant, living light. The colors inside this tunnel were of indescribable beauty. They weren't just the colors we know in our physical world, but a myriad of shades I didn't even know existed, blues deeper than the ocean, greens more vivid than the lushest forest, purples that seemed to sing and dance. Each color pulsed with its own energy, its own consciousness. Entering this tunnel was an overwhelming experience. It wasn't like floating or flying, but more like being gently pulled by an irresistible force. It felt as though every particle of my being was being drawn forward, into the heart of that light. As I moved through the tunnel, I began to feel a profound change within me. All the fears, worries, and anxieties I carried in life started to dissolve. It was as if they were being washed away by waves of pure love and acceptance. The most extraordinary thing was the feeling that I wasn't alone on this journey. I sensed presences around me, beings of light who seemed to be guiding and protecting me. I didn't see them clearly, but I could feel them, like old friends accompanying me on a long-awaited journey. As I moved through the tunnel, I began to hear sounds. They weren't sounds in the physical sense that we know, but more like vibrations resonating through my being. It was celestial music, harmonious and perfect. Each note seemed to carry deep meanings, universal truths that I began to understand on a level beyond words. Time seemed not to exist in this place. I can't say whether my journey through the tunnel lasted seconds or eternities. Every moment was filled with such beauty, such meaning, that the concept of time as we know it simply didn't apply. As I progressed, the light grew more and more intense. But unlike the sun's light that can blind, this light was comforting and welcoming. The brighter it became, the more I could see. It was as if this light was illuminating not only the surroundings, but also the depths of my own soul. It was at this moment that I heard a voice. It wasn't a voice in the conventional sense, but more like a thought that wasn't mine, echoing through my being. "Welcome back, Jonah," the voice said. It was a voice full of love, of unconditional acceptance, but it also carried a tone of seriousness that made me understand there was a greater purpose to this journey. As I approached the end of the tunnel, I began to feel a growing anticipation. It was as if I was about to arrive home after a long trip, or like I was about to remember something very important that I had long forgotten. The light ahead of me was now so bright that it seemed to engulf everything, and then, in a moment of pure transcendence, I emerged from the tunnel. What I saw and felt at that moment is beyond human words to adequately describe. It was a realm of pure light, pure love, pure consciousness. And it was in this realm of pure light that the next phase of my journey began. As I emerged from the tunnel, I was immediately enveloped by a presence that I can only describe as pure, unconditional love. It was as if the entire universe was embracing me, welcoming me. The feeling was so intense, so overwhelming, that for a moment I thought I might disintegrate, that my being wouldn't be able to contain such immense emotion. That's when I saw them for the first time, the beings of light. They didn't have human forms as we know them. They were more like luminous intensities, each with its own vibration and color, and yet, I recognized them, not with my eyes or my mind, but with something deeper, something I can only call my soul. Among these beings, one stood out. Its light was more intense, more welcoming. Without words, just through a kind of telepathic communication, I understood that this being was my guide. The same voice that had welcomed me in the tunnel now emanated from this presence. "Jonah," the voice said, not with sounds but directly into my consciousness. "There is much you need to see and understand." Beside my guide, I recognized another familiar presence. It was my grandfather, who had passed away years before. But he wasn't the frail old man I remembered from his deathbed. He was a radiant version of himself, full of life and energy. His smile was the same as I remembered from my childhood, full of love and wisdom. My grandfather didn't speak, but his gaze conveyed more than words could express. It was a look of pride, of love, and also of expectation, as if he knew I was about to embark on a journey of discovery and growth. The other beings of light moved around us, creating complex and beautiful patterns. Every movement seemed to have a profound meaning, as if they were weaving the very fabric of reality. My guide then took me to a place that seemed suspended in space and time. It was as if we were floating in a vast ocean of consciousness. Around us, images began to form, as if the very fabric of reality was unfolding to reveal its secrets. "Are you ready to see, Jonah?" my guide asked. "Are you ready to understand?" I didn't respond with words, but with my entire being. Yes, I was ready to see beyond the veil, ready to understand the truths that were beyond my earthly comprehension. And then it began. The only way I can describe it is as a life review. But it wasn't just a recap of the events of my existence. It was a deep immersion into every moment, every choice, every interaction I had ever had. I saw my life unfold before me, not linearly but as a complex web of connections and consequences. Every action, every word I had ever spoken, was shown not only from my perspective but from all possible perspectives. I saw the moments of kindness, love, and compassion I had, and I felt the joy and gratitude they generated, not only in me, but in everyone around me. It was as if I could see the ripples of positivity spreading through the fabric of reality. But I also saw the moments I wasn't proud of, the harsh words, the selfish actions, the times I chose the easy path instead of the right one. And the hardest part was that I didn't just see these moments. I felt them. I felt the pain I had caused, the sadness I had provoked, the suffering I had inflicted on others. It was an overwhelming experience, sometimes painful, but always enlightening. I understood, in a way I never had before, the impact that every one of our actions has on the world around us. And throughout this process, my guide and my grandfather were there, not judging, not condemning, just offering unconditional love and understanding. Their presence was a constant reminder that despite my mistakes and failures, I was loved and accepted. As my life review came to an end, I felt a deep sense of humility and gratitude. I realized that every moment of our existence is an opportunity for growth, learning, and making a difference in the world. But my journey was far from over. My guide, with a gentle gesture, indicated that there was more to be seen, more to be understood. And so, I prepared myself for the next stage of this incredible journey beyond life. After the intense experience of the life review, I thought nothing else could surprise me. I was wrong. What came next challenged not only my understanding of the present and the past, but also the future. My guide, still radiant by my side, said, "Jonah, what you've seen so far has been your personal journey. Now, it's time to see beyond." With those words, the space around us transformed. It was as if we were floating above planet Earth, watching it slowly spin. Suddenly, I began to see flashes of events, some from the past, others that hadn't yet occurred. I saw ancient wars, civilizations rising and falling, great scientific discoveries, and terrible natural disasters. It was as if all of human history was unfolding before my eyes in a timeless instant. But then something changed. The images became sharper, more focused, and I realized I was seeing events that had not yet happened. It was at that moment that I had the most shocking and disturbing vision of all. I saw two enormous buildings, twin towers rising imposingly against the blue sky of a city I recognized as New York. Suddenly, planes appeared, crashing into the towers in a burst of fire and destruction. I saw people running desperately, horror on their faces, thick smoke rising into the sky. It was the September 11th attacks, an event that would only happen years later. I was horrified. I wanted to scream, to warn someone, to do something to stop this tragedy. But my guide gently restrained me. "You are here only to observe," he said. "This is already determined." Those words hit me hard. How could something so terrible be determined? Where was the justice, the love I had felt so intensely moments before? Before I could formulate these questions, my guide continued. "The future you see is not fixed, Jonah. It is one of many possible paths. The choices humanity makes, collectively and individually, shape the future." With those words, the visions shifted again. This time, I saw two distinct versions of Earth's future. In the first vision, I saw a world devastated, cities in ruins, polluted oceans, burned forests. I saw people fighting over scarce resources, with hatred and fear dominating their hearts. It was a vision of an apocalyptic future where humanity had failed to overcome its challenges. But then, the scene changed. I saw another version of the future. In this one, cities were green and prosperous, with advanced technologies in harmony with nature. I saw people of all races and cultures living in peace, working together to solve the world's problems. It was a vision of hope, of a future where humanity had found a path of balance and compassion. These are the two main possibilities unfolding before humanity at this moment, my guide explained. The path that will be followed depends on the choices made by each individual, every moment. I was awestruck by the responsibility this implied. Each of us, with our daily choices, was contributing to shaping the future of humanity. "But what about the attack I saw?" I asked. "If the future isn't fixed, why can't we change it?" My guide responded with a voice full of compassion. "Some events serve as turning points in human history. They bring great challenges but also great opportunities for growth and change. What's important is not the event itself but how humanity chooses to respond to it." I then understood that even the greatest tragedies could serve a higher purpose, depending on how we choose to react to them. It was a perspective that transcended my limited human understanding, a glimpse into the cosmic plan that I was only beginning to see. As I absorbed these revelations, I felt a subtle shift in the environment around me. It was as if a new phase of my journey was about to begin, one that would take me even deeper into the mysteries of existence. As the visions of the future faded, I felt a change in the energy around me. It was as if the very fabric of reality was reconfiguring itself to show me something new, something even deeper. My guide, sensing my curiosity and perhaps my apprehension, spoke directly to my consciousness. "Jonah, you have seen the past, the present, and the possible futures. Now, it's time to understand the universal laws that govern all existence." With these words, the space around us transformed once again. Now, we were immersed in a vast field of pulsating energy. Complex patterns of light and color danced around us, forming symbols and equations that seemed to contain all the wisdom of the universe. "What you are seeing," my guide explained, "are the fundamental laws that govern all creation. Love, compassion, cause and effect, free will. These are not just abstract concepts but real forces that shape reality." As he spoke, I could see and feel these laws in action. I saw how every thought, every emotion, every action created waves of energy that spread throughout the universe, affecting everything around it. The law of love manifested as a powerful, unifying force, connecting all things in a cosmic fabric of compassion and understanding. I saw how acts of kindness, no matter how small, created ripples of positivity that extended far beyond the initial act. The law of cause and effect, or karma as some traditions call it, revealed itself as an intricate system of cosmic balance. Every action, every choice, had consequences that stretched far beyond the present moment, sometimes across multiple lifetimes. Free will, I saw, was a powerful force granted to every conscious being. It was the ability to choose, to shape our own destiny and, by extension, the destiny of the universe. But with this power came great responsibility. "Understand, Jonah," said my guide, "that these laws are not imposed by some external authority. They are the very nature of existence, as fundamental as the laws of physics in the material world. As I absorbed these truths, I began to understand why my journey on Earth was so important. Each life, each experience, was an opportunity to learn, grow, and align more perfectly with these universal laws. I saw how my own mistakes and failures were not reasons for condemnation, but opportunities for learning. The guilt and regret I had felt during the life review began to dissolve, replaced by a deeper and more compassionate understanding. Remember, my guide continued, the purpose of all existence is to evolve, to grow in consciousness and love. Every challenge, every pain, every joy is part of this process of evolution. As I contemplated these truths, I felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. I understood that my life, all lives, were part of something much greater, a grand cosmic plan of evolution and growth. But even as I marveled at these revelations, I felt a slight unease. A part of me began to wonder, what now? What would be the next step in this extraordinary journey? As if reading my thoughts, my guide said, "You have learned much, Jonah. But there is one last thing you need to understand before your journey here ends." With those words, I once again felt that familiar sensation of change, of transition. I was about to enter the final and perhaps most important phase of my experience beyond life. While the universal lessons still echoed in my consciousness, I felt a subtle shift in the energy around me. It was as if a gentle breeze was blowing through this realm of pure consciousness, bringing with it a distant call. My guide, always attuned to my perceptions, spoke with a voice that seemed to contain both love and a certain sadness. "Jonah, you felt it, didn't you? It's the call to return." I was surprised and, I must admit, a bit frightened. Return? Return where? To the physical world I had left behind? The idea seemed almost inconceivable after everything I had experienced in this realm of light and unconditional love. But why? I asked. My voice, or was it my thoughts, trembling with emotion. Why must I return? There's still so much to learn here, so much love, so much peace. My guide smiled, a smile that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the universe. "Yes, Jonah, there is much more to learn here, but there is also much for you to learn and accomplish on the physical plane. Your journey on Earth is not yet complete." I felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me. On one hand, the thought of leaving this place of absolute peace and love was painful. On the other hand, I felt a strange pull, a call from deep within my being, drawing me back to the world I had left behind. Sensing my confusion, my guide continued, "Remember, Jonah, everything you have seen and learned here, the unconditional love, the universal laws, the possibilities of the future, you have an important role to play on Earth." As he spoke, images began to form around us. I saw flashes of my future, moments of joy, challenge, and growth. And then I saw something that made my heart, if I still had one, stop. A little girl with bright eyes and a radiant smile. "Who is she?" I asked, although on some deep level, I already knew the answer. "She is the reason you must return, Jonah," my guide replied. "She is your future daughter. She will need you, and you will need her for your own growth and evolution." The revelation hit me hard. A daughter? I, who had always been so focused on my career, who had never seriously thought about having a family, would have a daughter. "Her name will be Seraphina," my guide continued, "and she will have an important role to play in the future of humanity. But for that, she will need your guidance and love." In that moment, I felt a profound shift within me. The fear and reluctance to return were replaced by a sense of purpose and determination. I had a mission, a reason to go back. "I'm ready," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. My guide smiled again, this time with approval and a touch of pride. "Remember, Jonah, although you are returning to the physical plane, you will never truly be separated from this realm. We will always be with you, guiding and supporting you, even if you cannot see or hear us consciously." He paused, as if preparing to say something of great importance. And remember this as well. The love you experienced here, the unconditional love that permeates the entire universe, is always available to you. You only need to open your heart to receive it and share it. With those words, I felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over me. I saw my grandfather one last time, his smile full of love and encouragement. And then, I felt that pull again, stronger this time. "It's time," my guide said. "Go with our blessing and our love, Jonah, and always remember what you have learned here." Before I could respond, I felt myself being pulled backward, as if I were falling into a deep well. The lights and loving presences began to fade, and I felt myself plunging back into darkness. The last thing I heard before losing consciousness was my guide's voice, echoing in the distance. "Until we meet again, Jonah. Take good care of Serafina." And then, everything went dark. The return to my physical body was as intense as the departure. One moment, I was floating in a realm of pure consciousness, and the next, I felt the overwhelming weight of physical matter enveloping me again. The first sensation was pain, a sharp, throbbing pain that seemed to course through every nerve in my body. It was as if every cell was screaming in protest, reluctant to accept my consciousness back. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the bright light of the hotel room. My vision was blurry, and for a moment, I thought I was still having visions from the other side. But as my eyes adjusted, I recognized the familiar contours of the room. I tried to move, but my body felt too heavy. Every breath was an effort, and I could feel my heart pounding furiously in my chest, as if it was trying to make up for lost time. Gradually, the memories of my journey began to return. The tunnel of light, the beings of light, my guide, the visions of the future, the universal lessons. Everything seemed so vivid and real, yet at the same time, so distant, like a dream I had just awoken from. And then, like a lightning bolt, a specific memory hit me. Serafina, my future daughter, the reason I had been sent back. With that memory, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. Love, fear, anticipation, all mixed together in an overwhelming storm. Slowly, I managed to sit up in bed. My body still ached, but the pain was gradually subsiding. I looked down at my hands, flexing my fingers, marveling at the complexity and beauty of the human body I had taken for granted for so long. That's when I noticed something strange. The room seemed different. Not physically, but the way I perceived it had changed. The colors seemed more vibrant, the outlines of objects sharper. It was as if I was seeing the world with new eyes, or perhaps with a new consciousness. I stood up slowly, testing my trembling legs. I walked over to the window and looked outside. Seattle stretched out before me, the city waking up to a new day. But it wasn't the same city I had known before. Now, I could see the energy pulsing through the streets, the invisible connections between people, the vibrant life in every plant and animal. I realized that although I had returned to my physical body, a part of me was still connected to that other realm. The lessons I had learned, the truths I had understood, were now etched into my soul in a way I knew I would never forget. But with that knowledge came an overwhelming responsibility. I had been sent back with a purpose, not only to be Serafina's father, but to make a difference in the world, to help guide humanity toward that brighter future I had glimpsed. How would I do that? How could I convey the truths I had learned in a way that people could understand and accept? How could I live up to the trust that had been placed in me? These questions swirled in my mind as I continued to look out at the city. But along with the doubts, there was also a deep certainty. I was not alone on this journey. The beings of light, my guide, my grandfather, they would all be with me, supporting and guiding me, even if I couldn't see or hear them directly. And there was Serafina, my future daughter, whose very existence had already changed my life in ways I was only beginning to understand. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs, grateful for every breath. I was back, I was alive, and I had work to do. With that resolve, I turned away from the window and began to prepare to leave the hotel. My old life was over. A new journey was just beginning. The days, weeks, and months following my near-death experience were an emotional roller coaster of discoveries. I returned home to my normal life, but nothing felt normal anymore. The world around me was the same, but I had changed profoundly. At first, it was difficult to readjust to everyday life. The concerns that once seemed so important, work deadlines, bills to pay, social status, now felt trivial compared to the cosmic truths I had experienced. At the same time, every small detail of life took on new meaning. A stranger's smile, a bird's song, a sunset, all became reminders of the interconnectedness of all things. I decided to leave my job in the tech industry. I could no longer dedicate myself to something that didn't directly contribute to the well-being of humanity and the planet. This decision surprised my colleagues and family, who didn't understand my sudden change in priorities. How could I explain to them that I had glimpsed the cosmic plan and could no longer ignore it? I began to look for ways to share what I had learned, to make a difference in the world. I got involved in volunteer work, began studying spiritual philosophies, and explored healing practices. I also started writing, trying to put into words the ineffable truths I had experienced. And then, on June 6th, it happened. Serafina was born. The moment I held her in my arms for the first time was almost as transcendental as my near-death experience. Looking into her eyes, I saw the same light, the same unconditional love I had experienced on the other side. She was, as my guide had said, a bridge between worlds. Raising Serafina became my most important mission. Each day with her was a new adventure, a new opportunity to see the world through innocent and wonder-filled eyes. As she grew, I began to notice in her a wisdom beyond her years, a connection to something greater that sometimes left me speechless. Years passed, and the world continued to change. The 9/11 attacks happened exactly as I had seen in my vision. It was a painful moment, but also a confirmation of the reality of my experience. I used that knowledge not to boast about having predicted the future, but to help people find hope and meaning even in the most difficult circumstances. I continued to observe the unfolding of global events with an eye on the future I had glimpsed. Sometimes, it seemed we were moving toward that dystopian vision of destruction. Other times, I saw signs of hope, indications that humanity might be choosing the path of reconciliation and harmony. Through all these years, I never forgot the lessons I learned during my journey beyond life. Unconditional love, the interconnectedness of all things, the importance of our choices. These truths became the foundation of my existence. Today, as I share this story, Serafina is a young adult, beginning her own journey in the world. I see in her the potential to make the difference my guide had mentioned, and while I don't know exactly what her role will be in humanity's future, I trust that she will find her path, just as I found mine. As for me, I continue my journey day by day. Each morning, I wake up grateful for another day of life, another opportunity to make a difference. I know that one day I will return to that realm of light and love, but until then, I have work to do here. My near-death experience wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning of a new understanding, a new way of living, a new journey. And that journey continues, not just for me but for all of us, because in the end, we are all connected, all part of the same cosmic fabric. And each of us has a role to play in the great dance of the universe. So, as I continue my journey, I leave you with this question: what will your role be? How will you choose to shape the future? Because in the end, that's what it's all about. Choices, love, connection, and remembering, always, that there is more to life and death than our eyes can see or our minds can comprehend. This is the lesson I learned on my journey beyond life, and it's the lesson I hope to pass on, one heart at a time. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, give it a like, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you can watch every new video and help us spread this message to as many people as possible. See you next time.